Look at this sweeping mountain view. You might think capturing an image with this kind of depth and detail requires a heavy backpack full of expensive lenses and complex camera bodies. But the truth is, you already carry the hardware you need to capture professional-tier photography. Getting a truly evocative image comes down to combining three deliberate choices: harnessing natural light, structuring your composition, and applying basic color theory. To start, you only need three things: a modern smartphone, the default camera app that came installed on it, and a microfiber cloth to thoroughly clean your lens. Once that lens is clear, mastering a few specific techniques allows you to build intentional visual stories using the phone already in your pocket. First, we need to set up your interface for structural framing. Open your camera settings and toggle the grid feature to the active position. This places a transparent grid over your screen, giving you a physical guide to align your shots. Next, take control of the focus. Instead of letting the phone guess what to look at, tap the screen directly on your main subject. This locks the sensor's priority exactly where you want visual clarity. This diagram shows the exposure curve shifting when you adjust the manual exposure slider that appears next to your focus box. By dragging this slider down, you lower the overall brightness and protect delicate highlight details from getting washed out. If you leave the exposure on auto, a bright sky often turns into a glaring white patch. But as you pull that slider down, you recover the rich blues and cloud textures, creating a cinematic look with higher visual contrast. Manually overriding auto exposure is the first step in claiming creative control over the final image. With your settings locked, the next factor is the environment. The most effective way to improve your lighting is to plan your shoots around the sun's position. The first hour after sunrise and the last hour before sunset offer warm, flattering light. This diagram maps the sun's trajectory. Shooting at midday forces steep, direct rays straight down, creating harsh, flat shadows. But during the golden hour, those shallow, angled rays add texture and depth to your subject. If the sky is overcast or rainy, keep the camera out. Clouds act as a massive natural diffuser, stripping away harsh shadows and creating the ideal soft lighting environment for portraits. Rain also leaves behind wet surfaces, like city streets or puddles. By moving your camera close to these surfaces, you capture dynamic, uninterrupted reflections that add an immersive, symmetrical layer to your frame. Snow requires a different approach. Because the bright white confuses the camera's light meter into making everything a flat gray, you actually need to push your exposure slider slightly up to keep the snow looking crisp and white. Unpredictable weather becomes a useful tool once you learn to adapt your technique to the environment. Now, let's build the composition. This diagram illustrates the rule of thirds. Instead of centering your subject, place them directly on one of these four intersection points to create immediate visual balance. This positioning naturally creates negative space. If your subject is looking to the side, position them so their gaze extends across that empty space. This gives the subject room to look into, generating compelling narrative tension. You can also use physical elements in your environment to structure the frame. Fences, paths, or roads act as leading lines, pulling the viewer's eye inward from the foreground directly to your central focal point. To find more of these lines, try the flip. Simply turn your phone upside down. This places the lens physically closer to ground-level reflective surfaces and foreground textures. Breaking away from standard eye-level snapshots forces your audience to experience the environment from a deliberate, novel perspective. Next, you need to separate your subject from the background. Color is one of the most reliable tools for achieving this. Let's look at this color wheel. When you select colors sitting next to each other, like this teal subject against a green background, you create analogous harmony. This results in a cohesive, natural, and calming visual atmosphere. For maximum impact, use complementary contrast. This means pairing diametrically opposed colors. Placing a red subject against that same green background forces the subject to immediately stand out. A chaotic, undefined background blends everything together. A clean background that relies on color contrast forces immediate visual isolation. The strict application of color theory elevates the background from a random setting into an intentional narrative framing device. Beyond the technical frame, aim to focus on the specific human emotions felt in that moment, including people, motion, or a candid look at what's happening behind the camera adds a layer of authenticity to your work. Look at this three-part layout. You can build narrative sequencing by starting with a wide establishing shot to show the environment, following it with a medium action shot of a person, and finishing with a macro detail shot. Combining these perspectives provides the context and detail needed to guide a viewer through the full scope of a single event. When you lock down manual exposure, shoot during the golden hour, find a low angle, and apply color contrast, you synthesize all these concepts into your final hero shot. Look at this side-by-side comparison. On the left is the default approach: flat lighting, automatic settings, and a cluttered frame. On the right is the exact same subject captured using the methods we just covered. Each of these manual steps adds a layer of intent that a standard auto capture ignores. Now it's time for you to take your phone outside and practice these foundations. In our next lesson, we'll explore how to take control when the sun goes down, using artificial lighting to craft images in the dark.